Hello, everybody. Hope you're safe and sound and self-distancing yourself so that we can help all of our frontline workers to be able to get their jobs and that they are protected as well. So just happy Earth Day as well. Big day, the 50th birthday of Earth Day. And we've got, a lot to talk about today because Earth Day to some extent overlaps with this whole COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that it's having upon us. We have to learn from science. We have to learn from the science of coronavirus and the science of climate crisis. And we can't ignore the reality of it because a sense of urgency has swept through our communities, and each and every one of us is playing a role in order to weather this storm, and many of our lives have come to a screeching halt, and projects and initiatives have been put on hold until we can safely proceed. One company, however, has decided that their project is too important to put on hold. They have decided that no public health risk is too great for them to consider taking their foot off of the gas. And one thing is certain, as long as this company refuses to let up, the same can be said for Alice Arena, who is going to be joining us for the next 25 or 30 minutes. And for those of you who are not familiar with Alice, she's one of the most passionate and committed organizers, activists in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 5 years ago, when Enbridge, which is a Canadian company, and Algonquin Gas announced their plans to build a natural gas compressor station right in the heart of Alice's community in Weymouth, right there next to Braintree and Quincy as well, on a little plot of land. Alice organized. She did not agonize. She organized, and she organized the Fore River residents against the compressor station and has led the group in the fight against the Weymouth compressor station. And ever since, despite Enbridge trudging ahead with their construction, even in the midst of the current crisis, Alice has been standing up, speaking out, organizing her community in opposition to this dangerous project. And this afternoon, Alice and I will be speaking about the status of the compressor project in Weymouth. And again, it borders, however, on Braintree and on Quincy. You can see all three communities from when you're standing there on that site. And what Alice and her organizers are doing to slow it down. And I think that this project is really a rotten deal for those communities. And Alice, I know you agree with me when I say that we need a Green New Deal for the United States of America. We have to get away from these kinds of decisions where these fossil fuels are just moving through community after community when we can use all of God's great gifts of wind and solar and all electric vehicles, and just avoid the need for this to ever be taking place in the first place. So I thought maybe we could start, Alice, with you explaining this issue to people. I think it's an interesting local angle on Earth Day, on the Green New Deal, on the need for us to move to a new era of energy. And Alice is nobody better than you of taking a global issue and making it local. So can you just tell us a little bit, Alice, about your work? And again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Senator Markey, for speaking with me today. And I also want to say happy Earth Day to you and to everyone, and also say that many hands make light work. And we have had a fantastic group of organizers, just incredibly intelligent and passionate people who have come together for 5 solid years and just worked on this. So the first thing I do want to say, because this is an extremely complicated issue and a very, very complicated project, is for anyone who wants more information, you really want to dig into it, go to nocompressor.com. That is our website. You'll see Senator Markey's picture up on our wall of fame. And anyone who has helped us along the way is up there. But I send you there because there is an incredible history of this whole project. And the reason it's so tied into EarthDay and into think globally, act locally, is that it will have an enormous effect on climate change. Jim Hansen, who was a NASA scientist, said that if they take all of the gas out of the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, you might as well just kiss the earth goodbye. And this gas is coming from the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania and is moved along the transmission pipeline by compressor stations like this one. And it goes up, it's going to go to Canada. The end result was supposed to be, it was going to a liquid gasification plant in Goldboro, Nova Scotia, and to be offshored into Europe and Asia and things like that. Things have changed on the world gas markets. So now this is all, not looking like that is even going to happen. So the question then becomes, why are we still building this compressor station? But that's sort of the short version of what the compressor station is and what it does.
So it takes natural gas from Pennsylvania, brings it through pipelines, and eventually that natural gas reaches Weymouth, Massachusetts. And then what does the compressor station do? I think that would be interesting for people, in order to then send it up further up through Maine and into Canada.
Right. So compressor stations, it's just exactly how it sounds. People use compressors to, blow up their tires, push things along. So what it does is it pushes that gas. So the gas is coming up from Pennsylvania, and every 50 to 100 miles, as the crow flies, they will have a compressor station that will keep pushing the gas and pushing the gas. And in this case, from Pennsylvania all the way up to the tip of Nova Scotia to this liquefaction plant that is not built.
So you're saying it's a way to push the gas, and they need to have this compressor station in Weymouth so that it just continues to push the gas up north from the south. So it comes from Pennsylvania to Weymouth. Now, how do we push it up there? Well, we need a big compressor station in Weymouth to do this.
Right.
Now, what is the danger of having a compressor station in the midst of this densely populated part of Massachusetts, Braintree, Quincy, and Weymouth?
Right. So you're very right. Within a half mile, what they call the half mile notification zone, it hits Weymouth, it hits Quincy, and it hits Braintree. And so what is the danger? There's a lot of dangers in this. Compressor stations do have a habit of exploding. And a lot of times it's not necessarily the compressor station that explodes, but it's a piece of the pipeline that hooks in close to that compressor station. Because in the daily operation of a compressor station, it creates heat and vibration that backs up on the pipeline before it. And that tends to be the weak link in a compressor station. So we talk about it affects our health, it affects our safety, it affects our environment, and it affects our economy. So it affects our health because it will add to an already overburdened area, things like more benzene, more formaldehyde, a toxin called 1,3-butadiene that causes leukemia. It will you spew particulate matter 2.5, and what that is this is just small pieces of matter that you can't see that go deeply into your lungs and causes things like bronchial problems, lung cancer, asthma, all kinds of really bad things. So the facility itself is highly polluting. That's the health part. The safety part is the fact that they do have a habit of exploding, or the pipelines before them explode. In this case, we have a pipeline that goes directly underneath a brand new bridge. The Fore River Bridge is going to end up being a $500 million project. This is federal money and state money. Brand new bridge, carries 33,000 cars a day, and the pipeline is literally 20 feet from the abutment. So that's your weak link right there. We've had corrosion issues in the last 3 years. They've had to dig up that pipeline twice. So we know this is going to be a safety issue. Also, they've been running at about 750 pounds per square inch. They want to jack that up to the maximum tensile strength of the pipe to 1440. And that's where you get into real trouble, especially in 20-year-old pipelines that have been in a saline environment. So that's
how big is this area that they want to do all this construction on? You know, this must be like a huge area that they have in order to get this done, huh?
Wouldn't you think? We've got some great footage from the other day when there was a piece of the building that they couldn't get in. It took them over an hour to try to figure out how to angle this in. So we have them under oath saying that they need 10 acres of land to build a compressor station. They only have 4.3 acres in this site.
Yeah, so I walked around with you, Alice. I walked around with you last October for a couple of hours on this site, and it's like a postage stamp.
Yes.
Right in between Weymouth and Braintree and Quincy.
Yes.
In a very densely populated area to be building such a huge facility that is not even needed, let's be honest, because both Eversource and National Grid, which are the utilities in Massachusetts, are saying they don't even need the natural gas that's going to be coming through for Massachusetts consumers. So it doesn't even benefit Massachusetts. It's for this Canadian company to be building this pipeline from Pennsylvania right up through Weymouth, up into Canada, to do whatever they're going to do with it. But the benefits to Massachusetts are pretty minimal, except the risks, which are going to be run by the people permanently who live in these three communities. So what has happened to this construction project since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic? Have they slowed it down? Have they stopped?
They have not only not slowed it down, they've accelerated. So they're down there really just building as quickly as they can every day. Their goal is to have it all up and done by July. And of course, because of the coronavirus, it has really kind of stopped our ability to stop them, at least in a physical way. We're obviously still in court with them, but they have.
But by that, you mean that you had been out there protesting.
Yes.
You have been out there organizing. You had been out there getting arrested.
Yes.
Right? So that's what you're saying. You, in the era of coronavirus, you don't feel you can go out there and get arrested because you don't want to be going into prison cells and maybe, who knows, giving coronavirus to prisoners. And you're concerned about that.
Yes.
But it hasn't stopped Enbridge from having all their workers show up every day.
No.
So how many arrests had already occurred before the coronavirus pandemic hit us?
So we had 32 arrests, and the last ones were towards the end of February. And each time we were able to shut them down for a day. So every time we were doing something like this, we were slowing their construction, stopping their construction. And then, of course, whenever they would see us gather, they would get very nervous and slow things down, even if we weren't really going to do anything. An amazing thing was we had a faith group that we marched across the bridge, and when they saw us coming, they really freaked out. This was, ministers and priests and, people going to have a faith gathering at the site, and was not an arrestable event, but it was just kind of funny to watch. So, as you said, we believe that it is our duty to protect our community. And if in that protection, it means that we're not going out, that we're socially distancing, that we will not allow arrests, because we understand our privilege. We can go into the jail and come out of the jail. And if we were to bring coronavirus into that, it just would not be good for anybody. So we stopped, sort of. So on Monday, we had a car parade, a Patriots Day car parade. And we went through the site several times, and we went to town hall, and we talked about how 4 years ago, Enbridge had come to town to try to buy out the town on a gag order with a bag of money. And the town ultimately refused the money and continued to fight with us in the courts.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. How is COVID-19 hitting Weymouth?
Oh.
And what is your concern about this project continuing its construction during this pandemic in terms of the impact on the health of the people in Weymouth and other communities that it might have?
So Weymouth actually has quite a few cases. I think the last I saw, and this was maybe a day or two ago, we have 367 identified cases in Weymouth. So it is hitting us, even though we are social distancing and close the schools and the libraries and things like that. So it's a concern, and the fact that we have a lot of out-of-state workers there, and they are not social distancing on the site. We have video from today that they're not social distancing. They aren't wearing masks. Some are, some aren't. It just sort of depends. There's no consistency to it. They are taking people's temperatures with an industrial thermometer that is not rated for that. And so they don't know if people are coming in sick or not. So they are just continuing without regard for any of this. And I do need to say that Governor Baker did say, construction sites shouldn't be ongoing if they can't safely social distance. And just today, he was asked a question by a reporter about the compressor station and how we have pictures of no social distancing and no masks. And he pushed it aside and said, well, the localities have to handle this. It's up to the town. And he knows it's not up to the town. This is a federal project. The town would have to try to get a cease and desist order in court, which is unlikely given the political climate right now. And so the person who could shut it down would be Governor Baker, and not happening.
So you're afraid that the disease could come into the community even more fully than it has already?
Yes, because we don't have any control over this situation, and especially with workers from New Jersey and Connecticut and New York and places where, there are high rates of this. We don't know, are people going home for the weekend? Are they coming back? We have absolutely no control, and Enbridge is under no obligation to do anything about this.
Yeah, so it's something that has short-term, near-term healthcare consequences in Weymouth, but it also has long-term safety concerns, long-term, for Weymouth and the other two communities. And it has long-term implications for the planet on Earth Day, that all of this natural gas is just like a straw going to be coming through Massachusetts to be taken up to Canada, to the mother company up in Canada. And we run all the risks and they get all the benefits. And the planet is ultimately going to be even more warm because of this natural gas, when we should all be focusing on a renewable energy agenda to produce the electricity which we need, to produce the vehicles which we need with renewable energy technologies. We just don't need this as a technology going forward, especially when our own companies say they don't need it for Massachusetts.
Right.
So we're very proud of you, Alice. We're proud of everything that you have been doing and fighting for this issue. So if you could just give us your one final message. What do you want the people who are watching right now to know about what you're fighting, why you're fighting, and why it's so important?
Okay, so we are definitely fighting this compressor station. We are fighting for the health, the environment, the safety, and the economy of not just our residents and the residents of Quincy and Braintree, but for all residents on the planet. And what I would say to anybody who, is looking at a situation like this, don't sit down, fight. You might not win. You might not win today, but the more we fight, we will win ultimately. And so that's the takeaway on that. And, I do want to say that in terms of the Green New Deal and all of this movement towards clean alternative energy sources, we have a moment right now to grasp this. while the fossil fuel industry, the house of financial cards, is collapsing, this is our time to take that and to run with it.
Thank you, Allison. I agree with you 100%. On Earth Day, we should just reflect upon our need for these fossil fuels and begin to create this wide pathway towards a future where ultimately children will have to go to the history books to find that we ever had such a situation where a compressor station had to be built in Weymouth, Massachusetts, for natural gas coming in from Pennsylvania to go to Canada. We know that we can do this. But the Green New Deal has a vision for those new technologies that can replace these 20th century technologies that are still seeking construction in Weymouth. And this issue is really all about justice. It's about justice to make sure that communities don't have these polluting technologies that are built right into the infrastructure of a community for a generation. The Green New Deal talks about the need to make sure, one, that we know the planet is dangerously warming, and we have to put in place the solutions, the new technologies that can solve it, but we must do so with fairness. We must do so looking at the communities that are traditionally oppressed by these polluting companies and all of their plants, and to make sure that there is environmental justice in the 21st century. So that's how I see you, Alice. I see you and all of your incredible team fighting every day for justice and fighting for the planet. And on Earth Day, I don't think there's any better example of someone who represents this grassroots, local opposition to the fossil fuel agenda of the 20th century than you, Alice. Okay, and people say all politics is local. Well, unfortunately, in the era of Donald Trump, all politics is loco, and that's what this project is. Just makes no sense whatsoever. You are just such an incredible, inspirational leader. Congratulations to you on all your efforts. Give my best to all of your team, your incredible organization. I love being with you out there, and our day is going to come. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Thank you for all of your support.